Hey everyone, welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we are diving into something wild. We're unpacking one of the absolute most fascinating political dramas in recent history, the 2026 Negeri Sembilan constitutional crisis. This is a story where ancient, centuries-old traditions collide head-on with modern democracy, creating a literal electoral earthquake. We are going to break down exactly what happened, who the major players were behind the scenes, and why this shakeup matters so much for the broader political landscape. So picture this. How on earth does a hyperlocal dispute over customary laws suddenly snowball into a statewide constitutional crisis? It's like a tiny spark setting off a massive chain reaction. How does a disagreement over tradition paralyze an entire government and force a snap election? Well, to figure that out, we have to trace the timeline back to its roots and look at the incredibly unique power structures at play here. Right, let's start with part one, the royal spark. To really get what went down, you gotta understand that Negeri Sembilan does things a bit differently than other states. They have this unique setup. First, you have an undang, basically a traditional ruling chieftain of a specific domain, or a luwak. They hold a ton of customary power. But right above them is the DKU, or the Dewan Keadilan dan Undang. Think of them as the state's ultimate royal council, keeping an eye on those customary laws. It is a super delicate balance of power, right? And when that balance tips, well, things get messy. And man, did things get messy fast. Look at this timeline. The speed of this is just staggering. April 2026 rolls around and bam! On the 17th, an undang is abruptly kicked out. Just 3 days later, 4 of these undangs team up for an unprecedented pushback. Fast forward to early June, they've literally proclaimed a rival monarch, and the prime minister of the country has to jump in. We're talking 0 to 100 in a matter of weeks. At the absolute center of this whirlwind was a guy named Mubarak Dohak. He was the 10th undang of Sungai Ujong, and he'd been in that seat since 1993. But on April 17th, the Menteri Besar announces Mubarak is out, fired. The charge? 33 alleged offenses against state traditions and customary laws, all based on advice from that royal council, the DKU. But Mubarak, he was not about to go quietly. And his outright refusal to step down is what really lit the powder keg. It didn't just end his reign, it essentially fractured the entire state leadership into 2 warring camps. Which brings us to Section 2, a kingdom divided. So the fallout creates these 2 fiercely opposing sides. It's like a massive political chessboard. On one side, you've got Faction A, the recognized ruling monarch Tuanku Muhriz, who had the full backing of both the Menteri Besar and the federal government. But on the opposing side, Faction B. This is Mubarak Dohak rallying 3 other undangs to his cause. Together, they didn't just reject Mubarak's firing, they went all in and tried to install their own rival monarch, Tunku Nizardin. Literally a full-blown constitutional standoff. It got so incredibly tense that the big guns had to be called in to restore order. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim actually had to step in on June 5th to lay down the law. He made it crystal clear, stating, "Constitutional disputes must be resolved through lawful and established channels." He firmly reiterated that the federal government, without a doubt, recognized Tuanku Muhriz as the rightful ruler. So you have this massive federal intervention trying to stabilize the state. But the crucial thing to remember here is that this royal rebellion didn't politely stay within the palace walls. It directly forced the democratic dissolution of the state assembly. And that perfectly tees up Section 3, snap state elections. Because this builds straight into an electoral showdown. Step 1, the constitutional crisis completely gridlocks the state's ability to govern. With traditional and political lines hopelessly blurred, Step 2 becomes totally inevitable. The Menteri Besar has absolutely no choice but to dissolve the state assembly, which leads straight to Step 3, hitting the giant democratic reset button. Snap elections are officially called for August 1st, 2026. If the politicians and royals couldn't sort it out, it was now completely up to the voters at the ballot box. Let's look at how they voted in Section 4, the election results. So election day hits, we see a really solid turnout of over 72%, and the results fundamentally shake up the landscape. There are 36 total seats in the state assembly. The ruling coalition manages to hang on to power, but the balance shifts dramatically. Barisan Nasional, or BN, grabs 18 seats. Pakatan Harapan, PH, takes 11, and the opposition coalition, PN, walks away with 7 seats. But the number you really need to pay attention to here is 18. 18 seats for Bien means they swept exactly half of the entire state assembly. Hitting that precise halfway mark was massive. It cemented Bien as the dominant force in the state and completely flipped the power dynamics inside the ruling coalition moving forward. And when you look at the individual races, wow, the voters truly shuffled the deck. Get this, the incumbent Menteri Bazar himself, Aminuddin Harun, actually lost his N32 Lingi seat to a Bien candidate. Meanwhile, Bien's Ismail Lassam absolutely crushed it in N15 Juase with a majority of over 4,000 votes, basically rolling out the red carpet for him to become a central figure in the new government. Oh, and here's a crazy twist. PN's Razali Abu Sama won M13 Sakamat. Why does that matter? Because Sakamat used to be Aminuddin Harun's absolute stronghold. But to truly grasp the undercurrents of this crazy election, we gotta look beyond these local candidates at the national power brokers hovering in the background. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the shadow operators. Because local crises are never just local, right? Enter Hamza Zainuddin. This guy's trajectory here is just fascinating. He gets sacked from his previous party, BSARCU, in February 2026. But he doesn't fade away. Nope. By June, right smack in the middle of this Negeri Sembilan crisis, he launches a brand new party, Party Wawasan Negara, or Wawasan. He gets reappointed as the national leader of the opposition, and then strategically slips his new party into the snap elections, competing under the PN banner. Talk about capitalizing on a moment. To give you a vibe check on who we're dealing with, former politician Khairi Jamaluddin perfectly captured the atmosphere a year prior. He called Hamza the Lord of Darkness. He said, "Operators are people who solve problems behind the scenes. You operated in the shadows." It's an intense quote for sure, but it highlights Hamza's reputation. He's known as an architect of power transitions. He waits in the wings, and when there's chaos, he leverages it into political capital. And Negeri Sembilan, that was the perfect opportunity. And honestly, the shadowy playbook worked. His brand new Wawasan party swooped right in and snatched up 3 totally crucial seats from the chaos. N04 Klawang, N34 Jimas, and as we just talked about, that highly symbolic N13 Sikamat. The big takeaway here for us is that local vulnerability is like a magnet. National political operators will absolutely swoop in to expand their turf when things get shaky. Which leaves us with one really big, lingering question. Sure, the ballots have been cast, the seats are filled, and a new government has taken the reins. But with a defiant, ousted chieftain still holding influence in the background, and national operators sinking their claws into the state, did the 2026 election truly resolve the crisis? Or are those deep-seated royal and political fractures still there, just waiting to trigger the next tremor? Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I will see you in the next one.